Zach, we are back and we are talking moves to make right now. We hope you enjoy the video. We hope you enjoy these moves. Please leave a like if you do. Comment down below what moves you're trying to make. The number one move to make for any Dynasty roster. Head over to patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Get in that Discord server. Enjoy the regular season hype that comes with being in a very active Discord server. But with all that said, Zach, promo in the books. Let's get to the content that people came for. Your first move to make.
Yeah, Bob, my first move to make is I am selling players that I can where it makes sense to. Now, look, there's a little bit to this point, right? But every week there will be new players on our rosters and our waiver wires that will find their value and their opportunities in real life increasing. And that could be for any reason. It could be, a rookie coming along. It could be injuries to other players, so on and so forth. A good example of this is Sam Darnold, right? Somebody that should have been rostered throughout your leagues, and his value has very much so increased the last few weeks. Well, I got to take a look at my team here, and there's selling windows and there's buying windows, but I'm looking to sell these kinds of pieces, not necessarily Sam Darnold, but I will use him as an example and give you a couple of others as well. But am I a competing team, Bob? And if so, does my team need a quarterback 3? Or is Sam Darnold now my quarterback 4? If he's my quarterback 4, it's probably time to put him on the trade block and see if I can jump on some value, sell for another player to help my team out, or even if I can just get some draft capital, because there's an opportunity that his value just goes away. If he gets injured or if he just totally poops the bed and they bring in Nick Mullins for whatever reason, you've lost that value opportunity to jump on Sam Darnold. I don't think Sam Darnold is going to be like a Puka Nacua where that value is so elite and it'll stay there. It could be like a Geno Smith or a Baker Mayfield. But for me, that's not something I feel bad about if I moved on a little bit ahead of time. I do feel bad about if I moved out of Puka or Amon-Ra St. Brown a couple years ago before I realized their full potential. So what I'm saying is it's okay to sell now because there's not going to be a significant value increase. Sure, there could be, but like everything would have to go right this season, and then you'd have to get a multi-year contract deal next offseason. And even so, like you look at Baker Mayfield's contract, it's a 3-year deal. It's really a 2-year deal. Same with Geno Smith a couple years ago. It's really a 2-year deal. So you're not losing a whole lot of value if you sell these guys ahead of time. Same if I'm a rebuilding team. Even as a rebuilding team, I want to have at least one quarterback that I can plug into my starting lineup so I have a respectable lineup every week. If he's my QB2, QB3, can I send him to another team that may need him? Or could I even bolster my opportunity by adding Nick Mullins and selling the two of them as a package deal, whatever that may be? But, whether you're a rebuilding team or not, Bob, this is an opportunity to sell a player that could potentially lose value in the next few weeks. I'll give you a couple of other players as well, but I want to get these players off my rosters if I don't need them to score points before any potential injury or value dip comes along, damaging their trade marketability. Couple of examples here, and I'm looking at I pulled only from the last week of trades. For this entire video, I only looked at trades on Dynasty Daddy from the last week because I want people to see that these are what's happening in our sleeper leagues. Dynasty Daddy aggregates their trades from sleeper. They're all from sleeper. Somebody sold Sam Darnold for Bryce Young. I would do that so quickly. It's not even funny. Just to kind of re-roll that opportunity into a young quarterback that's the number one overall pick just a year ago, and is potentially the latest Dave Canales rejuvenation project. Somebody else sold Sam Darnold and Russell Wilson for J.J. McCarthy. Love that idea. Love selling Sam Darnold and packaging him to pick up what's probably another starting quarterback next year. And then, of course, there's your plethora of Sam Darnolds for second and third round picks. Those are all fine. Another player, Aaron Rodgers. I saw 3 deals in the last week of Aaron Rodgers getting traded for a 25 first-round pick. Holy moly. I saw 5 more. And I didn't go all the way back to the full week of trades. I only looked at, the first 25 or 50. I saw 5 Aaron Rodgers for a 25 second-round pick. So, there's clearly people that still are on the Aaron Rodgers value train. We haven't seen Aaron Rodgers have a very good fantasy season in 3 years now. Even his last year with Green Bay, he was okay. He wasn't like top echelon, top 10 quarterback. And then another player for this list, Bob, I'm trying to get this guy off my roster wherever I can because there's an opportunity for him to get some extra reps in the beginning of the season is Jerome Ford. I'm just not the Jerome Ford guy. He was very mid when given the opportunity last year. He was kind of inefficient running the ball. They brought in Kareem Hunt and used Kareem Hunt. Now you've got Donta Foreman there. Nick Chubb is coming back. They did rework Nick Chubb's contract, and that's because they believe he's going to come back this year. So I saw 5 Jerome Ford for a 25-second. I mean, I pulled that all day. And then this trade, I absolutely loved Jerome Ford for Braylon Allen. I'm kind of just re-rolling my backup running back situation there. But holy hell, Braylon Allen has looked so good in preseason. And if there's any kind of an injury to Breece Hall, the value boom on Braylon Allen is going to go through the roof. So, yeah, I'd rather have Braylon Allen over Jerome Ford in that situation. So these are a couple of examples, Bob. I'm trying to get these players that, they have increased opportunity, or their opportunity in the future is going to slip away at some point, whether that be injury, whether that be age, whether that be another player coming in, whatever it may be. If I can capitalize on the value and it makes sense for my team to do so, I'm trying to do that before the season, before any potential injury, before any potential player comes in and takes reps away. I want to make sure that I'm maximizing the value on my rosters, Bob.
This boils down to if you anytime can sell a shorter term asset for a longer term one, it's 9 times out of 10 the right move to make. And the 1 time out of 10 is if you're in a competitive discussion and you need the points in your lineup like you discussed, maybe not then. But Aaron Rodgers for a 25 first is nuts to me. The fact that even second round picks are flying out the door too for him. Any combination of Sam Darnold plus for JJ McCarthy, all about it. Sam Darnold plus probably for Bryce Young, also definitely something I'm about. I like Jerome Ford if I have him on a competitive roster and I need him, but I tend to agree. I think he's a more mid-quarter or mid running back than anything else. The Jerome Ford straight up for Braylon Allen is a little iffy to me. I'd want a little bit more on top of that, I think, to really feel good about making that deal. Doesn't have to be much, a 4th round pick, 3rd round pick, a couple years out, all about that. But yeah, Zach, anytime you can take these short-term assets, like I think you've highlighted all of these to be, in my opinion, maybe there's some upside for guys like Jerome Ford to find Zach Moss type work in the future. Sam Darnold to find work like Ryan Fitzpatrick, who just kind of kept popping up here and there over the years, something along those lines, is certainly possible, but at the cost you're selling for, you again alluded to, where you're selling at, even if what I expect to hit their ceiling of what they could be, you're still feeling pretty good about the return you got right now, getting them off your roster, removing that risk, and just moving along with something else. And that kind of boils into my next one too. My next point, making sure the trades you're making are actually productive. I've seen so much of this, in the Discord, in the YouTube comments, looking through Dynasty Daddy trades, making sure you're making trades that are actually productive for your team in general, but also for the team trajectory. Like, what are you trying to do with the trades you're making? Just some examples of some recent trades. Some of these we talked about in our grading trades video. Go check that out if you haven't. But Jahan Dotson for Josh Downs, straight up. Pulling one straight from our Discord as a competitor selling Mike Evans for Keon Coleman and a second, while having little competitive wide receiver depth, meaning Mike Evans was his wide receiver 2 on that roster. Yes, I don't hate the value of going to Keon Coleman and a second. That's, in my opinion, pretty good value for Mike Evans, especially if you're a team looking to kind of rebuild, retool for the next couple of years. I'm about that. But this is that move where the value tracks, but does it really make sense for a competitive roster without making an additional move? I don't think it does. An additional move, being finding a way to use that second to now go buy another wide receiver. And at that point, it gets real convoluted. I don't like to make trades, predictive trades that, if I do this move, I'll be able to go make that move after for sure. No doubt about it. Because that's how you get that dry erase board going in the background. You get that Charlie Day meme going, and things get out of whack real quick. So it's okay to hold good players too at the end of the day, and just be competitive with them and be good with them. You don't have to squeeze every ounce of value about it. Same kind of thing that we talked about with running backs the other day, where the value cliff dies before the production cliff. Same kind of thing goes for wide receivers. So another one, JJ McCarthy for a 25 first. Don't hate the value, but what are we really accomplishing with this deal? Unless that pick is super early in that draft, you're losing out on a quarterback. Yes, you might get a better wide receiver or a better running back, But if it's mid to late, you're going to have those question marks every year. The last 2 years alone, we've had a lot of question marks with the back half of first rounds in Superflex and one quarterback especially. So just don't love that in general. Get a little more on top. Make it worth your while moving it. If you're buying JJ McCarthy for 25 first, I'm about it. We talked about that in the grading trades, but I certainly won't be selling him. And then the last example here, sending T. Higgins for a 26 first as a rebuilding team to quote unquote just to get points off my roster. This goes back to the, another golden rule of trading is that you have one asset you're willing to move, get the best thing in return for that asset than you can. And I think you could do better than a 26 first for T. Higgins because T. Higgins, if they're buying at that cost, they're probably expecting to be a competitive team for at least a little while. T. Higgins also on a rebuilding team, while yes, he's going to put up points, is going to outlast a rebuild. So I just don't feel like that's a super productive trade to make. And, all in all, these types of trades are a dime a dozen whenever we're reviewing completed trades on any platform, whether it's Dynasty Daddy, DLF, Trade Finder, whatever you want to pull from. They all pull from the same places. But and in your own leagues, I'm sure you see a lot of trades where you just look at it and it's just like, what the heck is this guy doing? Zach, I know we've had conversations about guys in our leagues making some trades that just seem a little wacky. But either which way, for me, this goes ultimately back to the concept of not just trading because you're bored and not just trading for the sake of trading. Before offering or completing any trade, ask, how does this help me? And how does this really help me? How does this improve my roster? And obviously you have to consider how that helps your trade partner too. It takes 2 to tango, 2 to hit accept on a deal. Really take that time to consider, how does this help me? And am I moving this asset, as I discussed? Am I moving this asset for the best possible return for what I need? And I'll be honest, I haven't made a ton of deals this offseason, not for lack of trying, not for lack of my own activity, but just because there's been occasions where I just don't have a good answer for those questions. That, I'm looking at the deal. I'm like, why is this really good for me? I feel good about this player. I'm not feeling like, oh, I need to get off of this player because I think they're going to suck or anything like that. So why look to make deals? Sometimes it's okay to just, I know we preach activity, but sometimes it's just okay to be content with your roster and feel good about where your roster's at. I used to be, as a kid, big on Legos, big Lego guy, big builder guy. And what I would do with my Legos is I would just build and I'd build and I'd build. And I'd get to a point where whatever I built was so freaking cool, whether it was a spaceship from Star Wars or a cool base, whatever it was. And then I just keep tinkering with it. And then before long, it was trash. I hated it. I just because I dicked with it too much and it was just this, that, and the other thing. But that's a little back to my childhood trauma, I guess you could say. But absolutely be sure you're making productive trades, because there's nothing that just boggles my mind more than like taking the time to set up a trade, discuss a conversation, and just have nothing productive come out of it. Just making a trade for, like I said, a lot of some trades are just seem like they're not super helpful, or they're just not all that productive. Zach, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, this is like an annual theme on this video before the season. Making sure that you're aligning your trades with your trajectory and your build. Yeah. My rule of thumb, really, and this is going to sound funny because I'm in 30 leagues, but when I start looking at a trade and saying like, "Ooh, like this would be nice," and like there's you and I just had this discussion. We were talking about a trade. I'll just let's pull the curtains back a little bit. I was looking for another wide receiver in our Rewinders league. I talked to you about Calvin Ridley. You wanted Ben Sinnott, and I'm like, that's a pretty good deal. And I'm like, all right, let me think about it. And then I thought about it, and I'm like, man, it's a fair deal now. But if Ben Sinnott turns out to be the player that we think he's going to be, I will so regret that trade. When I start to get that feeling, it's time for another league, man. It's time for another league. It's time for another draft or a project or a rebuild or something to shift my focus away. Or it's time for a new like Patreon or a discussion, or let me just stoke a fire somewhere else. Let me just turn my attention to something else. So sorry to bring that up, Bob. I know you wanted that Ben Sinnott share very badly.
Just going to keep sending trades.
For context, it's a full point tight end premium. So let me give you some more context on it. A lot of times these are boredom trades. And I totally understand it. I think, as more veteran dynasty players that you and I are, we are more aware of when these are happening, especially to ourselves. And there's something, it's hard to like learn that restraint of like, ooh, this is so fun, because it is very fun to trade in Dynasty. So make sure that you're aligning your trades with, either your competing or your rebuilding process. It's a great point. It's a great point to remind people of as the season gets underway.
Everybody wants to play Madden GM mode and, build this dynasty mode up. But at some point, you got to just sit and play the games. And all you can do, Zach, is talk about your next segment here, your next move to make. Let me know what you got. This is a good one. This is something to keep on people's radars. I don't know if enough people are getting in line with it. Talk about it.
Yeah, Bob, I'm ensuring my wide receiver depth, specifically if I have any of the top players that are right now sitting out and not practicing. We have 3 major guys not practicing. And look, this can apply to, other players that are not playing and practicing right now in any situation. But I'm really looking at the wide receiver position where we've got Brandon Ayuk, Jamar Chase, and CeeDee Lamb all not playing and or practicing right now. They might be at the practice, but they're not practicing. They don't have the pads on. They're not out there in game shape. And that is something that I'm keeping my eye on, because you may think that just because in Madden you can pull your guy off the injured reserve and plug him into your starting lineup. It does not work like that in real life. You cannot just go from 0 to 100, which is what the NFL is. And these guys are facing the top cornerback every single week. The defensive game plan is based around these guys. And so there's an increased likelihood, Bob, that when these 3 wide receivers come back, that they're not firing on all cylinders week 1 or whenever the first week that they come back is. You might see 70, 80% of them as they ramp up towards 100%. There's also an increased opportunity for soft tissue injuries for these guys. They could suffer debilitating sprains, strains, any kind of a thing where they go too fast to get back on the field. And so, really what I'm doing is, if I have one of these 3 guys and I'm relying on them week 1, I'm ensuring I have a backup plan now. And look, this is something that we've talked about throughout the entire offseason. But if you don't have that backup plan now, it's time to get one, because, right now, we're 2 weeks away from the regular season, just about 2 weeks plus. And they're not practicing. None of them are, have played in any preseason action. So these are valuable reps, valuable time. I'm just trying to ensure that I have some guys hanging around on my rosters that I can feel comfortable starting in my lineups if these issues take hold, or if these guys take time to get back into, their 100% snaps that they play week in and week out. A couple of guys that I'd be targeting right now. We've been talking about Brandon Cooks ad nauseum throughout the offseason. What a great backup plan to have if you have CeeDee Lamb. And then, CeeDee Lamb does come back. You could either hold Brandon Cooks for another injury, or you could try and sell, because if Brandon Cooks plays without CeeDee Lamb, he's going to have better numbers. He's going to have some inflated numbers. And then you could throw Brandon Cooks into my first point, which is sell a player high when you can. So I saw a Brandon Cooks trade on Dynasty Daddy for Kamani Vidal. And then another player, we just talked about him, Calvin Ridley. I'd like to have a Calvin Ridley share or two, because DeAndre Hopkins is not practicing right now, so you may be able to get him at a good price. I saw him on Dynasty Daddy go for Joe Mixon. Let me get a 28, 29-year-old running back off my roster. Didn't see any Benson not trades, though. I'll tell you that.
We could change that.
Yeah, we sure could. But I'm just ensuring that I have some kind of a backup plan, because obviously the players that I mentioned and other players at other positions that aren't getting repetitions or game reps now, it's very unlikely that you're going to get a typical week 1 performance where they're out there for the entire game and they're at 100% of what they should be. It's one thing for a guy to be working out on the side and doing, sprints and bench presses and stuff like that. It's another thing to be on a football field, getting hit, put the pads on, and these guys aren't doing that right now. So you're likely to see an increased opportunity for, like I said, strains, sprains, soft tissue injuries, so on and so forth, things that can affect these players on the field and in your fantasy lineups.
Love this point, Zach. Very important to bring up those soft tissue issues, because those can certainly hurt some folks to start the season. And something I just want to throw out is, getting through, like, if you can steal wins early on in the season, and this is something to an added reason to make sure you have that wide receiver depth. If you can steal wins early in the season, because early on in the season, there's a lot of funkiness that goes on, because teams are still kind of getting into their groove, especially now with a lack of preseason games. Teams are just not clicking on all cylinders yet, much like these players not taking reps. So if you can find ways to steal wins, ensuring you have healthy depth to start off the year with, that if you don't have a CeeDee Lamb in place, and granted, it's hard to replace that kind of production. But if you have something of significance that you can slot into a lineup, that'll certainly help you for sure. And speaking of lineups, I'll get right into my next point here. And that's avoiding the need to rely on rookies in my starting lineup. Like, I love rookies as much as the next guy, but I don't want to be relying on them in my starting lineup if I'm a competitive team, noting that this is primarily for competitors. But if you are rebuilding, you need to listen too, because far too many rebuilding teams, when they kind of try to map out when they're going to be competitive, is they load all their picks into 2025, for example. Let's just throw it a year. And then it's like, all right, 2025, I'm going to be good to go. I got 5 rookie picks that year. I'm going to be set, man. 2025 is going to be my year. I'm going to win the ship. Woo, let's go. Problem is, rookies take time to develop. Doesn't matter how much we love the rookie. We have to temper expectations in year one, unless you're going to stock up picks to, take the advice that we have sometimes where it's, hey, trade that pick for a proven veteran commodity at a discount because rookie picks are sexy. That's what people want. Then you can kind of accelerate that rebuild that little bit. But getting into it, as much as we love these rookies, XYZ, you can name any of them, we have to temper those expectations in year one for production. Simple fact of the matter is, rookies take time to develop. Yes, there will be a handful of impactful contributors every season for rookies, but it's still going to be less impactful than you think, more than likely. Marvin Harrison Jr., prime example, probably going to be an above average flex-worthy contributor this year, but it's likely we'll see some pretty heavy ups and downs week to week. As much as he's polished, ready for the NFL, in a great spot, I'm not going to put him in for a wide receiver 1 season. I'm just not going to do it at this point. And obviously, we'll see the starting rookie quarterbacks produce to some effect, but they're heavily limited by the weapons and systems around them. We saw that with Bryce Young last year. You can say he sucks as much as you want, but when you take into account the lack of weapons, the terrible systematic offense that was around him, you can't put it all on Bryce Young. But all in all, I'd rather look to find some stable, affordable veterans to bridge the gap in my rookies the first year. So I'm not saying, hey, sell all your rookies, they're trash. I'm just saying to look elsewhere if you want production this season. If you're looking for production this season, it's great to have rookies and a state plan for the future. And it's awesome if one exceeds expectations in year one and turns into that reliable starter for you. But it's just not something to rely on.
Yeah, this is a hard one because, we draft these guys with the expectation of being able to slot them in right away. I think maybe the way that I'm looking at this is just be realistic with my expectations if I am slotting them into my starting lineups, because there were certain situations where I was hoping JJ McCarthy was going to start and I was relying on him. Certain situations with other quarterbacks, like Bo Nix is another good one. But it's more so just like managing expectations. Don't expect everybody to be Puka Nacua, CJ Stroud, and don't be dismayed by Marvin Harrison not being a top 5 wide receiver, even though if you did a startup draft, that's where you have to draft him, right? Because you got to be realistic with the expectations of what is being asked for a rookie wide receiver. So this is a good one. And this one to me really goes, like I said, managing your expectations. If you're starting a rookie, what are you expecting from them? Are you expecting wide receiver 1 production? You might not get that. Yeah, I like this. I think it goes hand in hand with managing your expectations, and then kind of maybe into my next point a little bit. And let's say, Bob, you talked about the rookies that are on your roster, but I'm talking about the rookies that aren't on your roster. And, you've talked about one ad nauseum the last couple of videos, Malik Neighbors. Well, it's time to start engaging your dynasty managers in your leagues that have these rookies and say, hey, this, my main thing in a lot of my videos is just be present. Be present, be active, make people aware that you exist in your league, because I'm not depending on a trade to come into my inbox out of nowhere. That very rarely happens where I go, ooh, I got a trade. I don't know who it's from and who it is. Like, that very rarely happens to me in my leagues. Really what I'm doing here is I'm getting in these owners' inboxes and just – if I'm being honest with you, I'm probably throwing – this is such a bad thing to say – probably offering a less than market value offer for this player, just so I'm not only talking the entire time, right? Like, I'm sending an offer, and it's probably not what they want it to be, but I'm saying, hey, I'm interested in this player. And that drops the breadcrumb to potentially, if you have any rookie value dip, Bob, for you to come back in and say, hey, I'm still willing to buy this player. Dynasty owners are fickle and their opinions change with so little as a Twitter breeze. Somebody goes on Twitter and says one bad. I mean, look at Javonte Williams a couple of weeks ago. Look at the discourse. He's not going to make the roster. Oh, my God. Blake Watson and Samaje Perine and Jaleel McLaughlin and Audric Estime. It's like, dude, this guy's in line right now for potential RB1 opportunity. So, again, Twitter can sway the value of a player so easily, and you got to be there. You got to be present to jump on those players. A couple of good examples of players the last couple of years. Amon-Ra St. Brown, first 10 weeks of a season, did absolutely nothing, and you were able to buy him for 4th and 5th round picks. JSN is a really good one from last year, and even Chris Olave. A lot of people were expecting Chris Olave to be a wide receiver 1 last year, and he wasn't. And so you were able to probably buy Chris Olave at a 20-25% discount because dynasty managers were not getting the production and were frustrated with the situation. And there was no change in sight. Derek Carr is there under contract for at least this season, if not more. So this isn't so much a buy this player right now, but so much as it is a be ever present in dynasty managers' inboxes so they know that you're interested in a player. And you can jump on an opportunity where their performances aren't what people expect, or there's an injury, so on and so forth.
Love it, Zach. Are there any rookies in particular that you have on your radar?
Well, I mean, obviously Jermaine Burton, right? I think when people realize, I don't think Jermaine Burton is going to be a top 3 wide receiver for them unless there's an injury to T. Higgins. Jamar Chase is not suited up at all for the Bengals, and there is word that he will not play under his current contract. So that's a rookie that I'm still going to be. But I am not. People are all sad. Like, oh, he didn't play until the 4th quarter. Who cares? Who cares about preseason? Like, he's going to be a part of that rotation. You look at the things that the coaching staff said about him. Again, I could do a whole nother video, but I won't. That's a good one. I'm buying low on, if I can buy low on Lad McConkey because I think the Chargers are going to be very run heavy. There's a lot of players that I'd like to, a couple players that I wouldn't. I'm not going to buy in on Xavier Legette. I'm not going to buy in on probably Adonai Mitchell. If there are buy low opportunities, I'd absolutely love to. Any of the quarterbacks. I'm sending a lot of offers for J.J. McCarthy right now. If Michael Mayer is getting more receptions than Brock Bowers, I'm going to be sending offers for Brock Bowers. So there's a lot of players that I'm very interested in acquiring low. And that's a strategy for me every year because I'm not able to draft every rookie. But maybe I'm able to come in and just buy low on a rookie. We saw some of the deals in the offseason with JSN. You're looking now at a different offense there in Seattle where there's a potential for a 3 wide receiver sets for him to get a lot more work than what was there last year. So there's a bigger list of rookies that I'd like to buy than rookies that I wouldn't like to buy if there was some kind of rookie dip.
Fair enough, Zack. I like this move a good bit. It's keeping the door open on rookies you weren't able to draft because, like you said, you might not have been able to draft every rookie, but that doesn't mean they are never going to be accessible to you again, just like we are going to be accessible to you again in the next video. That's it for the one today, but I do hope that y'all enjoyed. Please leave a like if you did. Comment down below some moves you're trying to make in your dynasty leagues. Head on over to patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. Get in that Discord server for a free 7-day trial. And if you want some last-minute help with your rosters, check out the roster review option in the pinned comment below, as well as the YouTube description box. With that said, Zach and I are going to get the heck out of here. We will see you in the next one. But until then, I hope that y'all have a good one.